Have you ever experienced something so crippling in your life that has made you feel broken? I have. Are you someone who has a giving heart but is struggling to feel good themselves? Are you consistently putting your needs aside to take care of everyone else? If so, you're not alone. Giving starts with giving to yourself so that you are able to give of yourself to other people. Isn't it time you took back control and discovered what makes you tick? Join me in my journey and find out how you can feel better about yourself, live your best life, and share that with others. Thinking of yourself, it doesn't make you selfish, it makes you brave. I'm Nelia, and this is the Giving Starts With You podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Giving Starts With You podcast. I'm your host, Nelia Hutt. Thank you again for joining us today to talk about something that's really important to me. First of all, let me introduce you. This is my new friend, and I'm so excited because I've actually met her in person, and I haven't had the opportunity to do that with most of my guests. So I'd like to introduce you, Mary English. How are you, Mary?
I'm very well, thank you. And thanks for having me on your podcast.
Oh, it's the pleasure's all mine, honestly. The moment I met you, I'm like, I need to have this beautiful lady on my show. So incredible. So yeah, I'm excited today. So today we're going to be talking about healing grief through energy work, coaching, and sharing. And I want to tell you a little bit more about Mary. So as you can see, Mary is very personable, and you can tell her passion already. And we've just said hello here on the show. Mary is the owner of Open Heart Wellness. She is a retired nurse, Retired R.N. She's a Reiki Master. She's a doTerra wellness advocate, and she's a life coach. Now, through her life coaching business, Mary has helped many, just like you and me, work through a life of transitions, whether it's grief, loss, retirement, any of those moments in life that kind of surprise us, or we're looking at change, and how do we navigate through that? Mary, she inspires people to discover their dreams as they transition in the life that they desire. And this topic is so important to me. It means so much. And that's why I'm so happy to have you guys all meet Mary. Yay, she's on the show. So, Mary, you're not too far away from me. You're in Wasaga Beach, correct?
Yeah, yep. I am in Wasaga Beach.
That's great.
The tourist town of probably Ontario.
Yes. And you have, is it 2 daughters?
I have 2 daughters and their spouses, and I have 8 grandchildren.
Wow, congratulations. And your beautiful dog, whom I've met.
Oh, yes, can't forget Luna.
She's cute. Not too long ago, we were raising money for mental health awareness, and we had a couple of garage sales, and Mary and I were working on that together along with our friend Annette, and it was just fantastic. And we got to meet her dog, which was great. Anyways, so Mary, in order for the audience to know why you got interested in this, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to doing life coaching. What was it in your career from nursing, onto the future that changed your direction just a little bit?
I think I always enjoy working with people. It's even through my nursing career. I just found when I got to work, I was in the zone, and I enjoyed it. I retired when we moved to Wasaga Beach, and my husband died about 8 years ago, and I just wasn't ready to sit around and do nothing. So I became a Reiki Master over probably the year after he passed away. It took almost a year. And then I got into essential oils and started using the 2 of them together. And then I went back to school. I did some psychotherapy work, and then I went into life coaching. And it just seems to be that good fit to mix all of those things together. Especially when I see a lot of clients online, but if I do see people in person, I can use the Reiki a little bit to to help them calm down and relax a little bit when we're chatting. Or during our Reiki sessions, I can use essential oils to just kind of get them to settle down and not feel so nervous. So they all then tend to mesh together. The idea, and I think the life coaching is the same as when I was nursing. When I get in with a client or online with a client, I'm just sort of in my space, and it feels right. It feels good to be able to see the transitions over the weeks of our meeting together.
And I know that you're helping so many people. So thank you for doing that. How many years were you a nurse?
I was a nurse. Oh, this is going to age me. I was a nurse for 39 years.
Wow, that is a long time. Thank you for all of your work and your years of helping.
Yeah, I retired when we moved here to Wasaga Beach, and then we were here in Wasaga Beach for about 5 years before my husband passed away, and then I just didn't want to sit around being an old person anymore. So I wanted to do something and feel like I was achieving something and finding out new things. I enjoy delving into what makes people work and tick and how they put their puzzles together of their life.
Wow. So is that something that you recommend when there's a transition in someone's life, to not just stop living?
Oh, definitely. I think for us as human beings, we want to do something different, or we want to set a goal, but sometimes it's like being on that hamster wheel. You want something, but you don't know how to get it. You don't know how to get started. And you just keep going around with those thoughts in your mind and not knowing. And coaching is just starting, I think, over the past couple of years to come into its own. It was not something that was really out there. It was there, but not really accepted as well as it's becoming now. So I think as a coach, you don't give the people the answers, but you help them discover the answers themselves, just by the questions that you ask them, and a little bit of probing that you do. It makes them think and sort of decide how they want to do things. So I find when you see the lights go on when they start doing that kind of thing, or they come back for the next session and they thought about what we talked about, and to see those lights coming on, I find that exciting. So.
And it's almost like you're giving them hope too, because you're like guiding them. Like you said, you don't give them the answers, but you're sort of like their guide to take them through their challenges and the parts that are holding them back from their end goal, right?
Yeah, I guess, and I see it sort of as their cheering committee. I help them set a goal, and then you're that cheering committee to keep them motivated to actually move forward and to begin at least starting to find how they're going to reach the goal, or set goals that they'll reach, for a week or a month in advance, and then we'll go another month in advance, or depending on whatever it is that they're trying to do, or their issues are. Just seeing that, thought process. And quite often they'll admit to me that the questions when we started, they weren't real happy about the questions. But when they got thinking about them and they got seeing what their answers were, they understood why we did what we did. So even those things I find are exciting for me.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's that moment where you're looking somebody in the eye and you're like, oh my God, this is getting through. Like, I can see them, their brain is working and they're starting to get excited about their life, and they're starting to get, the healing is starting to happen. And, most of us want to have a better life and want to live more fulfilled, but without somebody there to kind of guide us, and without someone there to be accountable and help us during the times where we're like, this is too hard. It's tough to do it by yourself. It really is.
It is. It's hard, and you don't have the same motivation to try to do it by yourself, because you get so wrapped up in that hamster wheel, as the what ifs, and should I and shouldn't I, and even how even talking to family members, it doesn't necessarily work the same way, because you don't always like what your family tells you. You don't always think they know what they don't really know how I'm feeling, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. But when you're talking to someone who's essentially a stranger, and you tend to take advice a bit better from someone who's a family member.
Yeah, and your family. Yeah, and your family sometimes are just too close. Like, they love you, so they may not want to be completely honest with you because they're trying to hold back, or sometimes I find they grew up this like similar to you, so they have similar views and similar influences, so they can't really set themselves apart from your situation, right? So I think
That,
that's,
yeah, that's right.
yeah. So what is your favorite type of person to work with, to help? Is it somebody who's been through grief, or just really anybody who finds themselves sort of like a fork in the road and not sure what to do with their transition?
That's kind of a two-edged question for me. I think I enjoy talking to anybody that's looking to make changes or to do some transition in whatever way, whether it be grief or job change or retirement or any of those sorts of things. But grief, I have a history in the grief process because of my husband's passing away. And I did some time working with hospice on doing one-on-ones with clients and stuff. So I think that's probably kind of I guess that slides ahead a little bit as a favorite because of the time I did with the people on one-on-one and kind of my own personal experiences with grief and being able to see them change. And I think I see now when I was especially when I was in hospice, as they came in for their first session, often they were in their old kind of scruffy clothes and they hadn't bothered to do their hair, or if it was a woman, there was no makeup on her. And she just looked sad, very sad. And then by the time he got to the third session, because we would meet once a week, and they would come in and they would be dressed up and their hair would be done, and their eyes had some sparkle to them, and you could see that slow. It was not a fast thing per se, but you could see that slow change that they wanted to look better and to feel better. And
what a
so
beautiful
I think
feeling.
yeah, those small things is what you really look at it. You think just tiny baby steps are working towards feeling whole again and feeling happy again. So
I don't think that's a small thing. I think that's huge, especially when you're struggling and you may be at the end of your life, or it's huge. Those moments that you're saying, what a difference. Even just getting themselves ready it can bring so much, like you said, so much life back into them, and I think that's amazing to be able to give that gift to somebody. Do you work just with the person or with their whole family sometimes?
I work with the person. Now I did do a grief group with particular people, six people coming to my house, and that's similar to working with one-to-one, but there are differences as groups, and even there you see them. I think one of the kind of stipulations in the group that you're not to give advice to each other, but to share how your story was with each other, and having the other members of the group hear that they're not really so strange, and there's differences in each person's grief, but there's a lot of similarities. So the pain, the loneliness, the fear, and those things are there for everyone that's lost somebody, and we all deal with it differently, but they're all there. So to hear how other people are dealing with their grief is a consolation to the other members of the group, and they tend to kind of bond, and they'll comment on how they're doing with different parts of their grief journey, and they'll share with each other and share with the group. It takes a couple of weeks usually for them to feel comfortable, but it's interesting to see how they come forward. And once again, maybe I was a teacher in another life, I'm not sure, but I find I tend to give homework, whether it be the one-to-one coaching online or whether it be the grief group. We do things through our time together, but I usually give them something to think about on the week, prior to the next meeting. And it's interesting how, some of them don't do the homework, but those that do, I think, are the ones that begin to really start moving forward with things. And they have, questions like, what did you lose when your partner passed away? What do you feel you lost? And make them sort of really start thinking about that. And then I counter that with what have you gained over this time of grief? And that's not making light of grief, but looking at a positive side of things. You know, what are you seeing
Mm.
in yourself? Are you seeing that you're stronger than you thought you were?
Wow, I
Are you
love
seeing
that.
that you're beginning to manage a little bit better? Those sorts of things. And those are hard questions
Oh,
for them to answer.
yeah. What a
Um,
powerful question to ask, what have you lost? Because most people would just think, well, that's kind of a crazy question because of course you lost the person that you lost. But it's not that simple. You lose
no.
so many things. And I love that you asked that question. I think that's fantastic because we could, I mean, there's a list of things that people lose when, you know, whether it's a loss of a job or health or family member or spouse. But what are some of the things that come up in these conversations when people talk about what they've actually lost?
Um, People, especially if they've lost a family member or a spouse, you know, they lost their identity, because if it's your husband or your wife, you were one person with that partner,
Mm,
and now the partners aren't there. So you begin to ask yourself, who am I now? You know, who am I really now? I don't have them to count on or fall back on. Those sorts of things. I think that's it's also a fear thing. You know, when I'm here, I have to manage by myself. And I say from my own personal experience, um, your partner does certain things, and even in this world of, you know, of things now, where we do all different things. In my experience, because I'm older than you are, guys usually did certain things, and the women did certain things, and some of us did mixture, but you know, there's always certain things your husband would do that you really couldn't. I mean, I couldn't fix my car, or I
mm,
wouldn't know how to fix the barbecue. I had that already happen this week. Fix a barbecue. Those things you just take for granted. You know, your partner's there; they're going to do that. Or, you know, if
mhm.
it's a man, how do I do laundry? How do I cook? My wife always cooks for me.
Yeah,
So
even
those are the
banking.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all those things that you just you know, it goes on for a day-to-day life. You don't think about it until that other person isn't there to take up their slack or take up the stuff that they normally do.
Mm,
And those are all transitions that you have to start thinking about.
mm.
And it's, I think, and especially for women or men who are older, that's a major issue for them to start looking at what's my life like. And, you know, socially, people go out in pairs. They go out with their husband or their
Mm.
wives or boyfriends or girlfriends. And now, you know, do I want to go out to a party on my own? Do I, you know, how am I going to do that? Who am I now that I'm going on my own? Those are
Mm.
all things for them to kind of begin to think about working through.
Yeah, because you might even have things that you've stopped doing just because, like, so I've been married 27 years now. And
Mhm.
from the first year of marriage till now, we every year it seems like we have the same conversation. And one of those conversations is, what do you want to do when you retire? And from, you know, when I was married at 23 and now I'm 50, those answers change every year. But the common thing is that we decide together because there's two of us. So I
Mhm.
find that when you lose your partner, something that I hear a lot of is, well, what am I going to do now? Like, we had this plan of maybe selling our home, going to a cottage, or traveling the world, or, you know, starting this hobby together, or all of these things. And then when you lose that person, it's like, you're right. It's like, who am I now? But what do I even like to do? I haven't been on my own for all these years. I just don't know. You know, life happens. We go to work, we come home, we make dinner, we take care of the kids if we have kids, we do pets, you know, all of these things. And then when you're in that transition, everything changes. So it's almost like, okay, what am I going to do? What do I like to do? How am I going to spend my time? How am I going to There's just so much and so much uncertainty, right?
Yeah, and there is. I think for me, I hold my classes a little bit different than I think probably. I follow a lot of it I follow with the hospice protocol, because that's where I learned my grief work. So I follow along a lot with that, but I tend to spend probably almost half of the sessions towards the end and doing exactly that. What do you love to do now? What do you like to do? What did you like to do before you got married? Is there something that you thought you would always like to do just for you?
Mm.
And how are you want to do that? And what, is, do you have a close friend that you can maybe travel with if you still like to travel? Maybe, girl traveling can be fun too. Look at, look at how you want to be 3 months down the road, especially for those who are, it's different for whether it's been a month that that person has passed away or 6 months. What do you want to do going forward? How are you going to manage with some of the things that happen after a person has died, all the practical stuff, what about what are we doing with the clothing and all this kind of thing? Dealing with that when you can get past that, or when you're wanting to look at something else, how are you going to go about going out to dinners by yourself? Are you going to find a friend, or are you, when are you going to be ready to start to date again? Do you want to date again? All those questions, and
Yeah.
have them think about those sorts of things. I find that I tend to, the comment that's out there, and I think it's valid in a sense, but I don't like it. It's that the comment that you never get over grief. And I think that leaves a really negative connotation of grief. Not that grief is easy, not that you should think that you are never going to get over it, but that's what I try to tell my people. You're going to get over the grief, but you have to want to get over the grief. So if you work through it and you go through all the processes and you step out there a little bit, you'll get over the gut wrenching pain. Eventually, that will eventually begin to subside, and it'll show up from time to time. But you begin to find there'll be less and less of those gut wrenching, horrible feelings and stuff. But I said, if you hang on to the idea that you never get over grief, it can lead people into that sense that they're always sad. And I mean, it's been 8 years since my husband passed away, and I still think about him pretty much every day, really. But I don't sense that sense of sadness. I fear we've learned a lot together, and part of the learning is what is getting me to where I am today, because we had a good relationship. I learned a lot from him, and I think he learned a lot from me. But that has given me that energy and courage to do stuff. So looking at taking that twist on, it's always going to be grief, and you're always going to be sad and miserable and horrible, and life is over, basically, to look at what is beyond the grief. Try to see what's going to be a positive part in your life, without making light of the grief. It's not that the grief isn't painful, but looking at where you can find happiness and joy again.
I love that you're having these conversations, and this is how you do it, because, as you know, so it's so important to talk about it. Like, I didn't talk about my grief for 12 years, and it put me in a spiral of so many new problems. So now I've got all these new problems, and I still have my grief, right? Don't do what I did. Not good. So I love that you're having these conversations with people and allowing them a safe place to talk, because most people, when they have grief, or my experience is just to get them started to talk, where they're not always like in that horrible feeling of sadness. And it is hard. And I just want people to know that getting over your grief, as Mary's describing it, does not mean you don't think about the person, does not mean that you stop loving them. It just means that, like she said, you think of them and their good memories rather than just the sadness and the part that they died. You move on to their whole part, right? And I think that's so important, because do you find, like, even once you're at that place, you can still get grief attacks?
Oh yes, definitely. Definitely get grief attacks. It's and as you go farther into that process, or move farther away from the initial grief, they're not near as frequent, but they are surprising, because I mean, I can say for myself, just a few months ago, it was like I was fine, and all of a sudden something struck me, and I'm thinking, where the heck did that come from? And so it does come up from time to time, but it doesn't last long. It comes up, and it might be a few hours, or maybe it's just a day or a part of a day, and it's okay again. But I think for me, in my own mind, Marvin and I had talked a little bit before he passed away, that he wanted me to get married again. I said, well, I'm not going to promise that, because I don't know what I'm doing with that one. But I said, well, I'll be okay. And I think my sensibilities for him and for what he would say to me is that he doesn't want me to be sad the rest of my life. And I wouldn't want him to be sad the rest of his life either. If I was the one that had passed away and he was living. So in that way, you're honoring that person that's died by making your life good and making it happy and doing what you need to do to be happy and stuff. I know a couple of people that they're like 30 years beyond the death of their partners, and they're still in the depths of grief. Like they're sad all the time, and all they want to do is die so they can be with their husbands. And I'm thinking, that's just so sad.
Heartbreaking to hear that.
It is. It's very sad. When you've got a life that you're gifted with, to be happy. And I know if I had passed away and Marv was here, I would want him to do whatever was going to make him happy and live whatever he has in his life. And so I think I try to encourage the people to do that without making them think that I don't think that grief hurts, because it does hurt. But you do need to go forward, or try to go forward.
Yeah. It's, sometimes I joke with my husband. I'm like, when I die, you better be sad. You better be sad for a little while, but then move on.
Well, yeah, that's okay.
Damn straight.
If you're too happy after the first week, you're going to be in trouble. I'm going to haunt you.
Yeah. So Mary, I wanted to talk to you about, so I don't know very much about energy work. I'm learning a bit about it, or Reiki, and I'm just trying to think, how do you use that to help your clients like heal through grief and things like that? How do you combine the two things together?
The last group I had, I offered them either a free Reiki session or a aromatouch session when the group sessions were finished. And I was surprisingly, but 4 out of the 5 chose Reiki, which I was surprised because they didn't really understand it either. So I explained it to them, and for them, when the sessions were finished, they all said, that was really unbelievable. What were you doing? And I said, I wasn't doing anything. I just had my hands touching you a little bit on your chest or your arm or your hand, where you got my hand. But I think you can do that. Reiki is energy that we all have. We all have energy, and we can all share that energy. Some people choose to do that, some people don't, but you can share sometimes without even realizing. But even sitting there and for me anyway, holding a person's hand or giving them a hug, I can, in my mind, I know my Reiki values, the process I go through when I begin to do a Reiki session. I can do that sort of in my head and send that Reiki, just holding their hand, sending that little bit of extra energy or that love to that person. That energy goes wherever it's most needed. Like I don't have control. Like I'm not some kind of God that does something. I'm just there and being present. The energy goes where it's most needed. So, you can do a full session, but you can also we did a Heal the Healer Day earlier this week. And we did yoga for 2 hours. And it was really great. It was with sharing and yoga, but the 2 people that were facilitating the group are both Reiki Masters. So as we were doing some of our positions, they would come by and do Reiki, maybe over your shoulders or over your low back. It was just like a 5-minute thing. They would just come and put their hands on your shoulders or your back and do with that energy. So it's very simplistic, and yet it's very healing in so many ways.
I love that, especially with somebody going through grief or a transition. It's like just that human touch can really bring a new element to the coaching session too, right? Just kind of allows the person to trust you as well, like creates a relationship.
If you look at not only the Reiki, but the healing touch, I learned when I was doing the hospice, we can do healing touch for those clients who are getting close to death and their families, just by holding their hand, putting your hand on their shoulders. Your hand on their shoulders and sort of maybe have your fingers pointing toward their heart, and you just sort of sit there and send energy to them or let that energy flow. And it's amazing how that person that's dying can be quite restless. And doing that kind of energy work with them, they'll just calm right down.
Wow.
Families are amazed that, it's, that it works. This is stuff that really works. You don't need to only use medication for this kind of thing. You can use the human touch and the love that you can send to those people, right? And the families. And it helps the families as well, to do that kind of thing with them. And it's something that takes 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. It's not like you have to spend an hour doing that. Healing touch will just take a few minutes to do that. So
Wow, I love that.
we're gifted with so many things we can use to help people and to show love and caring for people. It's good to be able to do that.
And you've got such a big heart. I know this for a fact. So I think I think you're in the right line of work for the type of person you are, because honestly, you're incredible.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
I just enjoy it. I really, I feel like that's just sort of part of what I do. It's not like it's anything special. It's just part of what I do, or try to do anyway.
So Mary, I just want to go back to your personal story as well, when your husband passed away. You said that you wanted to kind of pick yourself up and say, well, I don't want to just, have a life where I stop living. Was that hard for you to do? Like, do you recommend, is there certain things that you recommend to somebody that maybe is having a hard time, even just with the mindset of doing that? Because I think that's where most people get stuck, is right after.
Yeah, I think it's important to try and keep your life as normal as you're able to do that, I think it's important to lean on families and friends that you can trust. My girls were definitely, there if I needed anything. And you don't want to burden your children or your kids, but it was just nice to know they were there, and nice that, they would check in and say how you doing, or different things like that. And being able to kind of know that support is there if I needed it or I wanted it. So I think it's important. And I talk about Marv a lot. Even today, I share different stories of it. And we've kept his name and him alive, in a sense, through our families, because the grandkids still talk about him. Those who know him talk about him. Those who never actually met him, they know about him, and they ask questions. So I think and using that loved person's name with the people that you're talking to, that keeps him alive, keeps the person alive. And as people get used to hearing you use the name, they'll start using that name. Because they don't know, people don't know what to say to you when you've lost somebody, or lost a husband, or a child, or anything. People are terrified that they're going to say the wrong thing. But I think just making acknowledging that has happened, acknowledging with the person's name, is that your name is really who you are, part of it. So those sorts of things. And because I'm stubborn, I once I got settled, I thought I really wanted to go back to. I used to go to Zumba class, and I think I'd like to go to Zumba, but I didn't want everybody fawning over me. So I thought, okay, I'm going back, and I'm just going to hang in there and see. And it was hard to go back, because people are going to start saying how sorry they are, and I don't want to start crying in front of everybody. So those are all the emotions. We all have different personalities and personality types. But I went back, and people did a little bit of that, but it was just, they were just happy to see me come back. I said, well, we didn't think you'd be coming back yet. No, I said, no, I need to move and get going. I can't be at home all the time. And that just helped me kind of begin to get out of myself and doing things. And that gives you that that hour or whatever that time would be, to forget about all the stuff that's going on. When somebody dies, you have so many technical things to do, and changing names and changing addresses and checking insurances and what do I do with the clothes, all of those things. If you stay in your house, that's all you're thinking about, and making all those phone calls. So if you go out, if you can get yourself to go out, and even if it's just having a coffee with a friend, that will sometimes just get you that breather that you need stand away from your grief for half an hour or an hour, and then you can go back at it. You know, it's not like you're trying to close a door on it. It's that you need to have a breather for a few minutes and just
And that's
not think about it.
okay. Yeah. Like I love, there's so many things you just said that I love. So one of the things that you said was about the name. Your name is your identity for so many reasons. So I had never thought of that before, but I think that's great advice. Um, you know, and I truly believe, and I mentioned this in the book I wrote about grief, but I truly believe that our relationship remains with the person we lost. It just changes. So,
Mhm.
you know, it's not like our relationship has to end with them. It doesn't have to be so final. Yes, they're not here on earth with us, but our relationship changes from, you know, into memories and changes into, you know, our thoughts and what we say and keeping that person alive by saying their name. That's awesome. I love that so much. And when you do go back to work or you go back into your circles, you know, you had mentioned that it's kind of nice in a way that people acknowledge what happened to you, but sometimes it can like overburden and kind of come at you so much that it's almost like, okay, stop reminding me every 2 minutes. I know you're trying to tell me that you care about me, but sometimes it can be too much. And I just want the listeners to know that it's okay to tell people, hey, you know, I appreciate that, but I just can't talk about it right now. Or, you know, whatever it is that you need, it's okay because everybody's grief journey is different. The timeline is different. And although it's important to talk about the person, you don't want your identity and going back into work or your circles of friends to be only about that experience. You also want to keep a part of yourself too. So I appreciate you saying that because it's not something we automatically think about. Like you had said a few minutes ago, how people just, they're uncomfortable. They don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So there's the usual things, you know, that people say. And because we really don't know what to say, like there are no words in the English language that can really make somebody feel comforted when they've lost somebody that they love. Like
Yeah.
I just don't feel that there are. But I think the worst thing is when people are so uncomfortable that they say nothing because of they're afraid that they may say the wrong thing.
Mhm.
You know, I think saying something is better than being too scared to say the wrong thing. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is because it always it's like that elephant in the room, and that's that I have a poem with all my material that I use in my classes that talks about the elephant in the room. How do you deal with that elephant in the room?
Mm,
And it's interesting because it is better just to say something and just sort of so you know you can acknowledge that you don't have to say a lot, just so the person knows that you've acknowledged it, knowledge that they have had a difficult time. They are grieving and they are in pain. Um, and maybe, you know, it is okay for the grieving person to say, I obviously can't talk about it right now, but I'd love to have coffee with you sometime if you have time. Something like that, so that if you do want it, if you do want to have a conversation, if the person is
mhm.
wanting to talk to you and sort of spend time with you, it's easier to kind of sit and share your feelings in a one-on-one thing with somebody that you trust. You're not going to talk to everybody about what you're feeling, but if there's somebody that
Yes.
you really feel comfortable with and you trust, then it's nice to have that person come and just sit and visit with you, or go to their house and have them kind of make you that coffee or tea and just sit and be there with them. That's another way of getting away from that grief. Is like going to work. You go to work and you do your job, but you need to come home sometimes and debrief yourself
Yeah.
from your busy day. And grief is the same thing. You're in that grief scenario, but you have to step away every once in a while, whether that be have a hot bath or go out and take a walk or visit a friend. You need to do that, and sometimes you need to push yourself. It's hard to do it when you're feeling
It is.
in that throngs of grief and pain.
It
So, and I
is.
think that's maybe where a grief group or a coach can say, okay, you know, what are you doing for yourself this week? Have you eaten? Are you eating?
Yes.
Not eating. Well, how are you going to change that? What do you want to do to change that? And help them figure out how they could change that. Or have you met with a friend? You know, have you been out this week? No. then where do you want it? Do you think you can manage to go out for coffee once this week with a friend?
And we don't have to talk about anything,
No.
it's just having somebody like, so for a long time, I didn't go to grief counseling or anything after my dad passed away for years and years. And I regret that so much. But when you do go, the people around you in the group, they're so inviting, like you had mentioned earlier. They do, it really does help to listen to one another's stories, because there may be something in that story that will help you heal a little bit, or make you think twice about why do you feel a certain way. And there can be so much healing in just listening to other people's stories, and it's almost like the more you feel you don't want to leave the house and do stuff, the more you really need to,
Yeah.
because it can get scary sometimes, and it can be very lonely and very dark. And I agree. I think working with a coach or working with a counselor can really help more than anything. It can really help people just have a reason to get up, have
Yeah.
a reason to have a conversation. And those people will understand.
And that's a safe space because they're not your family or your best friend judging you, whether, okay, it's been a month, you should get over it. Like, let's go,
Yes, I
and that's
hate that.
our society points us in that direction. I mean, they say, if someone like that dies, someone close to you dies, you have 3 days off work. Well, really? If you're not,
Yes.
you really, aren't really wanting to go back to work in 3 days because you're exhausted and you're in pain and you're trying to figure out where you're going to go from here, and you have to go back to work. So our society is not, not geared in the sense of allowing that person to that time to grieve, and giving them, letting them have that extra time. They give, I guess in some respects, I think they give pregnant moms or moms who've just had babies, they give them a year to bond with their child. And maybe that grieving person, if it's a family member or whatever, needs to have that little bit of extra time to kind of get their feet under them. It's not going to end your grief by any means, but it gets your feet under you so you're ready to go back and face your work life
Yes,
and these sorts of things. So that's a
absolutely.
just now.
No, but that could be so helpful for so many people. Even if people want to go back after 3 days just to get a little bit of a taste, but then when they have their grief attacks, say, I need a couple of days. And for their bosses to be understanding of that, and for people to allow that healing to happen, because it can, losing someone you love can change your life so much. It can really, it's that fine line between being broken and feeling like things are never going to be better, to living a life, learning how to be happy and live your life without that person. And people need to get the help that they need to get. They need to have that safe space to talk about it. So, what are 2 or 3 things that someone can do when a friend of theirs is grieving? What are a couple helpful things that people can do? Because sometimes people want to help and they don't know what to do to help someone who's in pain.
I think sometimes just being available, being present
Mm,
with them. Sometimes just maybe just being there, and you don't have to even talk.
mm,
You're just there. Sometimes you just have to say, I know you're in pain. I don't know how to help you, but I'm willing to do whatever you need. What
mm.
do you need? Do you need me to be somewhere to do something for you? You
Yeah.
know, Even if it's talking, or maybe it's just making a meal for them, or bringing a meal over and
Yes.
sharing something with them in that respect. And it doesn't need to be anything big. It's just knowing that that person is there. If you need them, they're there.
Mm.
And having someone, especially in the early throngs of grief, having someone that will do that for you, because there's so many people that just they don't want to, they haven't got the energy to cook for themselves. They just don't feel like
Yes.
eating, and that can go on for a long
Or
time.
they forget to
Yeah,
eat sometimes.
those sort of things. And I had someone when I was just doing the hospice work in Barrie. Was a gentleman, a younger gentleman, like he probably in his 40s. And his idea was he wanted to get back to normalcy, but he didn't know how. How
Mm.
do I get back? Well, when do I know? And I said, well, it'll happen eventually. Well, then, and for a man, when can I start dating? I said, when did you want to start dating? Well, I don't know. And I said, where's the picture of your wife? It sits on my side table. Okay. And said, what happened when you look at that picture and you get up in the morning? I usually cry. Then do you really think you're ready to get into a relationship? Do you think maybe when you can look at her picture and remember the good times, maybe you're ready to look at having a relationship?
And
Oh,
again, you're not telling him, you're just guiding him into his own answers, you know?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So it's just those sorts of things that those things, those thoughts come up because people don't know how do you grieve? No, there's no rules and regulations of grieving. They don't know whether, sometimes they think if they go somewhere and they laugh and have fun, that's wrong. It's the same as, at some
Yes.
point years ago when you had to wear black for a year.
Yeah.
You had to go and you weren't supposed to have fun or do anything good. Things have changed that. So it's okay to, if you have some time and you laugh. You're not dishonoring the person, but you're honoring yourself. You have to
Thank
find some.
you. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. I remember catching myself laughing one time and being like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, it was pointed out to me by a grief counselor that I was like, no, this is okay. It's
Mhm.
okay. I'm still alive. I'm still here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I go back to that. What would your partner say if that you ran around sad all the time and
Mm,
you were afraid to laugh or cry or whatever? What would that person that you're grieving say to you?
yeah.
And I don't think there's any of them that have passed away that would say, "Yeah, I want you to stay sad and don't you dare laugh because you're supposed to be sad now because I'm gone." I don't think any of them would say that.
No.
So, I mean, and it's okay to be able to think of that on this side of the fence, but when you're on the initial grieving, you need someone to remind you that you have to live. You have to, laughing is okay, crying is okay.
Mm,
Um, all of those things are okay.
absolutely. You got to feel them because don't suppress them for sure. And I think
Mhm.
another thing that might be helpful too is sometimes friends come and they gather around you in the initial time, and then 2, 3 months later, nobody's around. And
Yeah, they're all
sometimes,
gone.
yeah, sometimes you need somebody in a couple of months after everybody else is gone to say, hey, I'm going to go check in on this person. Because everybody
Yeah.
seems to come in flocks when it happens, and then they all disappear. And it's like, don't do that. And try to have,
I'm
yeah,
still here. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, it's true. Because they're there in the crisis. The people flock to you in the crisis, but when the crisis seems to be over, and that happens with things with grief, but it happens with a lot of other crises that we
Yes.
have too. Um, but it's those true friends, and you find out who your really true friends are when you are in the midst of a crisis and that person is there and they're there 6 months later and they're checking up. So how's it going today? Are you feeling, like you're getting a little farther on in that journey, or are you eating okay, and how are
Mhm.
you feeling? And um, and those people are there, and you find who they are when you're in a crisis.
Yes, I think we've had a really important conversation here today. And it also reminds me how important it is to, as a person who is still alive, to live my life in a way that teaches people something so that when I'm not here, my legacy can continue and I can bring something positive to the people that are missing me. And I think it's so important to appreciate the gift while we're here, but also when we're not, to appreciate that relationship that is
Yeah,
still
yeah, I think it
still
is.
there.
I've said to the kids, because I mean, they think I'm never going to die. And I said, well, the reality is I will at some point in time, not for a long time. You're stuck with me for quite a while yet. But I said, when that happens, you're going to be sad. But I said, I'm going to be picking out music. And I said, I do not want all this low, sad, mournful music played at my funeral, because trust me, I'll be back and you will be sorry because I'll be
My mom wants Elvis. She's already told
back.
me.
I like country music or some of my I call it woohoo music that I really like. That's a bit quieter music, But I said, that's, play the music that I will like. Don't play the sad, sorrowful, Amazing Grace kind. Not that there's anything wrong with Amazing Grace, but that wouldn't be something I would want at my funeral. I want music that says who I have been. So I said, I know you're gonna be sad, but I said, remember, be happy as well. You can be happy.
Wow.
So,
Mary.
they don't like having that conversation, but every once in a while I'll just say, remember, I told you if you're not happy, I'll tell them that.
Yeah, but let's live the best life that we can. Let's bring meaning and purpose to our life and to those around us, so that we can continue that relationship with people after we're gone too. I think that's a beautiful thing. I know that you're helping people out there, Mary. If somebody wants to get in touch, oh, you are. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, if somebody wants to, if somebody needs help, if somebody would like to become part of your groups, how would they reach out to you?
They can reach me on my Facebook page or on my Open Heart Wellness Health website.
.ca.
I think you have those. I think you have those.
Yes, I'm going to put them all in the show notes. And I know you have very generously offered our listeners a 30-minute free session just to get an introduction with them, which I think is very generous. Thank you very much. And
well, that's just, I think I do that because if you're going to meet with a coach or a counselor of some description, you need to feel like you have a connection with them. And because you pay for these sessions. So if we have that half-hour chat, they can feel whether they feel like they can connect with me and talk to me and gain something from it. And maybe if they don't, then they will find somebody else that they can connect with. So that I want them to have that time to feel like they're going to be able to make that connection and be comfortable talking about those sorts of things.
Yeah, because you can't open up about your feelings if you're feeling, like you have to hold back, right? You've got to connect with the right person. So absolutely.
Yeah. I think you also have my phone number. They can call me directly if they prefer. If they leave me a message, I'll call them back.
Wonderful.
So,
yes. Check out her website. Absolutely. openheartwellnesshealth.ca. And you're going to be hearing more from Mary because Mary and I are going to be doing some future, collaborations together. So I'm sure you will hear her back on the podcast again. But Mary, thank you so much for taking the time today out of your busy day, for sharing with us your personal story, for giving us some advice on how, what we can do for each other and how, healing works, and just giving everybody permission to do it in their own way, and thank you for helping with the hospice groups and locally here in Barrie where we live. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on this podcast. I've been an honor to be here. So once again, I'm outside of my comfort zone, but it's good.
And I love it. You're such a go-getter, you don't let things get you down. I mean, you're out there, you're learning, you're sharing your expertise with everybody. And I absolutely love it. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad to have met you in person and continue to become friends. So thank you, Mary, for joining us today. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe or leave a review. See you next week on the Giving Starts With You podcast.